Nestled in the heart of suburban Oak Haven, the Willow Creek HOA had long been a source of tension among residents. At the center of many of those tensions was Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen bee of the neighborhood. As HOA president, Karen took her position far too seriously. Rules were her lifeblood, and enforcing them gave her purpose. From mailbox paint colors to the height of holiday decorations, Karen had an iron grip over her community. Some respected her commitment, others loathed it, but no one dared challenge her until 62-year-old widower Jim Bennett planted a small vegetable garden in his front yard. The garden was modest. A few tomato plants, basil, maybe a pepper bush or two. But to Karen, it was a full-blown rebellion. She claimed it violated Willow Creek's landscaping ordinances and demanded its removal. Jim disagreed and refused. That's when things took a dark turn. Within weeks, Karen initiated legal proceedings through the HOA, attempting to impose fines and ultimately a lien against Jim's property. But Jim wasn't just a retiree with time on his hands. He was a retired civil attorney. He knew his rights and, more importantly, he knew how to spot when something smelled off. As the case began to move into mediation, Jim reviewed the paperwork submitted by the HOA. Something strange caught his eye. His own signature on a form, agreeing to the initial penalty. The problem? He never signed anything. Karen, it seemed, had forged his signature to expedite the legal process. He took the documents to his former law clerk and a trusted notary for verification. The findings were crystal clear. The signature was a fake. But Jim wasn't just going to confront Karen. He had a better plan. He compiled all the evidence, including time-stamped correspondence and comparison samples, and quietly filed a motion with the district court. This motion requested a judicial review of the documents submitted by the HOA, specifically those bearing his supposed signature. Karen, unaware of the brewing storm, continued parading around the neighborhood, barking at teenagers for skateboarding too loudly and measuring lawn lengths with a ruler. But soon, her world would come crashing down. Jim Bennett's motion didn't sit long in limbo. The district court, intrigued by the allegation of document falsification, scheduled a hearing within 2 weeks. Karen received her court summons with little concern. She assumed it was just another formality, another opportunity to flaunt her control and impress the board. But this wasn't an HOA hearing. This was a legal court, and the judge assigned to the case, Hunter Evelyn Moore, was known for her intolerance of procedural games. Karen arrived at court flanked by 2 HOA board members, dressed in a power suit like she was attending a corporate merger. Jim came alone but armed with a thick folder of documentation, including certified handwriting analysis, timestamps, emails, and a statement from a notary public. As the hearing commenced, Judge Moore invited Karen to present her case. With her usual self-assurance, Karen launched into a tirade about non-compliance, community standards, and protecting property values. She spoke over the judge, waved vaguely at the paperwork, and dismissed Jim's garden as unsightly and unhygienic. Then it was Jim's turn. He stood calmly and passed copies of the forged document to the judge and the clerk. Then he presented the original version, the one he had actually received, and signed. He laid out a timeline, pointed to discrepancies, and submitted a certified letter from the notary, verifying the signature was not his. The courtroom grew quieter with every page turned. Judge Moore's face went from neutral to stone cold. "Ms. Whitmore," the judge finally said, tapping the document with her pen. "Did Mr. Bennett sign this document in your presence?" Karen blinked. "Of course he did." "You're under oath, Miss Whitmore." There was a pause. Her voice faltered. "Well, he said he would. He gave me permission." "Permission is not a signature," Judge Moore interrupted. The judge then invited a forensic handwriting expert to testify, someone Jim had retained. With visual aids and overlays, the expert demonstrated how the signature was clearly traced and inconsistent with Jim's known handwriting patterns. The courtroom stirred. Karen's face lost all color. This court has zero tolerance for document forgery, Judge Moore said, and especially not in legal filings submitted to a court of law. Before Karen could utter another word, the judge called for a recess. But before the gavel hit the block, she added, "Ms. Whitmore, do not leave the courthouse." Karen sat stiffly on a wooden bench in the courthouse hallway, her manicured fingers tapping out an erratic rhythm against her phone case. Her calls to fellow HOA members went unanswered. Her usual support network, those who once feared or fawned over her, had suddenly gone radio silent. Inside the courtroom, Judge Moore reviewed the remainder of the evidence Jim had submitted, which painted a damning picture. Not only had Karen forged a signature, but she had done so repeatedly. In fact, Jim had discovered 3 more documents bearing his fake signature, each submitted by Karen in previous HOA disputes over the past year. When court resumed, the atmosphere was heavy. The bailiff escorted Karen back to the front. She avoided eye contact with Jim and instead stared blankly ahead. Judge Moore's voice was firm and measured. This court finds substantial evidence of willful falsification of legal documents. Miss Whitmore, not only did you submit forged material to this court, but you did so under the pretense of legal authority. Karen attempted to speak, but the judge held up her hand. This matter exceeds civil dispute. You are hereby remanded to county custody pending formal charges for fraud, forgery, and obstruction of justice. Gasps echoed throughout the courtroom. Karen's mouth fell open. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding, ma'am," the bailiff said, stepping forward. "Please place your hands behind your back." She stood frozen for a moment, then complied. The echo of the handcuffs closing around her wrists felt surreal. Her designer handbag slipped from her arm and hit the courtroom floor with a soft thud. Karen Whitmore, the woman who once fined neighbors for leaving their garbage cans out too long, was being led out in handcuffs. Past residents who had gathered out of curiosity now stared with wide, stunned eyes as she disappeared behind the courtroom doors. Jim exhaled for the first time in hours. Outside, news of Karen's arrest spread like wildfire. Smartphones lit up with messages. HOA group chats exploded with speculation, and front yards buzzed with chatter. Many residents, long fearful of Karen's overreach, felt an odd sense of liberation. Some were shocked, others quietly celebrated. The county prosecutor confirmed that Karen would be formally charged within 48 hours. Her actions had jeopardized not only her own legal standing, but also the credibility of the HOA itself. Emergency meetings were scheduled. An interim president was appointed. And Jim, he returned to his peaceful front yard garden where the tomatoes were ripening in the July sun. But the saga wasn't quite over yet. In the weeks following Karen Whitmore's dramatic arrest, Willow Creek entered a period of reckoning. The HOA board, now minus its long-standing president, scrambled to clean up the legal mess she had left behind. Residents demanded transparency. A third-party auditor was brought in to review all documents Karen had handled during her tenure. What they uncovered sent shock waves through the community. Karen hadn't just falsified Jim Bennett's signature. She had done the same in 4 other instances, targeting homeowners who dared to question her. She had filed unauthorized liens, levied unlawful fines, and even altered meeting minutes to fabricate compliance votes. The HOA, once feared under her reign, had unknowingly become a weapon in her personal power trip. The county DA's office filed multiple felony charges against Karen, 4 counts of forgery, 2 counts of fraud, 1 count of perjury, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. Her bail was denied pending trial, citing the breadth of the forged documents and her ongoing manipulation of authority. Karen's arrest also sparked a deeper conversation about HOA governance. Willow Creek wasn't the only neighborhood with a Karen problem. Other nearby communities began re-examining their boards, bylaws, and enforcement processes. News outlets picked up the story, dubbing her the tyrant of the cul-de-sac. She became a symbol of HOA overreach gone wrong. As for Jim, his quiet act of resistance earned him unexpected respect. Neighbors who once kept their distance now waved from their porches. He was invited to serve as a legal advisor on the newly restructured HOA board, though he politely declined. "I prefer tomatoes to politics," he said with a chuckle during a neighborhood barbecue held on his lawn. The vegetable garden flourished. Inspired by Jim's resilience, several families began planting their own gardens. Willow Creek's once uniform lawns were suddenly blooming with peppers, squash, and raised flower beds. The rigid monotony Karen had so zealously enforced gave way to personality, color, and a renewed sense of community. At Karen's trial months later, she pleaded not guilty, but with irrefutable forensic evidence and testimony from multiple residents, the verdict was swift: guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 18 months in state prison, plus 5 years probation. She also faced civil suits from those she had targeted, Jim among them. But in the end, it wasn't revenge that drove him. It was principle. Because in Willow Creek, justice didn't come from intimidation, fines, or forged signatures. It came from standing your ground, even if it was in a garden bed. If you thought this HOA drama was wild, just wait until you see what happens next in Willow Creek. Hit like if you think Jim did the right thing by standing up for himself. Leave a comment below. Would you ever trust your HOA again after something like this? And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life legal shocks, neighborhood drama, and courtroom showdowns every week. This isn't fiction. This is justice.